Okay, COM220, we're going to get started and do some things today. I'm going to cover some real basic things, that's some information you're all going to need for this class, some terms that are important to you, a couple of things like that. Understand that we're going to be jumping onto camera work probably on, well, we will be on camera work on Wednesday and Friday. Expect your Wednesday video to come in later because I will video some of the camera stuff and we'll kind of go from there. But let's jump in and take a look at what we're going to talk about here. Television production here. Let's talk about ENG, electronic news gathering. This is a term you're going to hear, and I want you to remember because it's the type of thing that you'll hear people say whenever the talking about their news gathering equipment and things like that. They'll say, I have an ENG camera set up. That's their process for going out and gathering the news, is with that electronic news gathering equipment. And there's two things. That's the equipment that you use, and that's the process of going out and gathering news stories. Typically, these are done for news packages. And let's talk about the art of shooting. And shooting, a couple of things to remember. Electronic field production, EFP. Now, I know ENG, EFP, all kinds of initials like that, but basically, it's kind of self-explanatory. You have your electronic and you're doing field production. You're going to use a camera to go out and shoot video that's going to help to tell the story that you're trying to tell on camera. So if you're putting together a news story, and I'm going to use the example of, let's say, a flood in front of our building, which has happened a couple times. I'll use that story continually throughout here and examples from that as we talk about it. Basically, that means I would take a device to capture in the field images of that flood, things that help me to use to tell that story, because any image that is recorded is better than no image at all. The difference would be someone sitting in front of a camera and say, there was a great big flood in front of the communication building today, and it was really bad, and there was a awful lot of water, and there was just it was just really bad. Well, that's good, but an image would help to tell that story better. Images and how we gather this has changed since the 1960s. A key thing happened in the 1960s that really changed news and how we looked at news forever. In the 1960s, the United States was involved in the Vietnam War. The difference in this particular involvement and in anything else that happened in the past is that news reporters were in place in Vietnam with cameras getting stories out there live as they took place. So basically, the first time forever you could sit at your dinner table at night and see live footage of what happened during that war during that same day. And that changed the way people looked at news, and it changed the way we all saw things. We went from using a news camera, which was big and bulky and took someone with a really nice broad shoulder to balance it up on, to having the smaller camcorders, which were still big. They used the big VHS tapes, down to using the smaller tapes, and then down to using mini DVs, the little smaller circular DVD part, to even now being able to use your cell phone. We have SD cards. We had the newest thing that's come out is having the 4K cameras that can shoot really good high quality and shoot it for very inexpensive. Let's talk about time. How long is a good story? Or how long is a story good? Let me ask it that way. Remembering that if I'm going to talk about the flood in front of the communication building, that's not really important to us today. That was really important to us the day of the flood, and maybe a day or so later. But if you're looking back a significant amount of time, it just doesn't have the impact, and people don't, quite honestly, they really don't care anymore. Uh, there was a lot of really good stories coming out right after the incident that took place at the Capitol. There have been less and less and less, and now roughly 2 weeks away, or a little less than 2 weeks actually, it's just not as much of a news item as it was during that time. We'll talk about preparation for for how you get ready and go tell a story. Always have what you need. And I capitalize always uh, because I have in the past, uh, while I was doing some shooting for KNW, I was going to shoot uh, a video package in the middle of campus at the Greyhound, the little fountain at the pergola there. So I loaded up my stuff. I had a tripod, which is big and bulky. You guys are going to get to play with those this week. I had a backpack camera, big and bulky. You'll see what I mean about that. I loaded everything up. I was doing a solo shot, so I went out there. I set my tripod up, made sure everything was all there. I hooked it up and put the camera on there, and my battery was dead. The secondary battery was also dead. Since it was a solo shot, and since I trucked all this stuff out there, you can't leave it. I loaded everything back up, came back to the station, found a good battery, made sure I had a second, made sure that time I made sure that I had tape and everything else I needed, and then go back out to do it. The other side of that is know where you're going to shoot. Know if there's going to be any special circumstances that are taking place. And then probably the most important thing is know who and what you are shooting. Know if the person that you're talking to is the one that actually is the person to be talking to. If you are asking questions about, say, if you're doing a story about the new fire department being built by the city, and you want to know what it's going to cost budget-wise and things like that, then the state representative is not the guy to talk to because he doesn't control that. He has a lot of control over a lot of stuff, but he's not the person that's going to help put the budget together that the city's going to have to carry. So you need to know who you're talking to. When you go over there and you start making your arrangements, are you talking to the person in charge that is the person to give you that information? So know who you're shooting, know what you're shooting, and it's actually just about as important to know where you're going to go shoot. Let's talk about the storyline. When you're preparing your story, and we'll talk more about preparation in a minute. We talk about your 3 phases of preparation. But the first thing is tell the story in sequence. Now, if I'm going to tell a story about the flood, if I'm going to tell about the fact that the road does flood, then I might want to start with it during a dry spell and just show this is a busy street. There are a lot of people that park here, a lot of students and whatnot, and show it being dry. Then show what happens when the flood starts. Cover everything. In fact, if there's damage that's done, those things need to be there as well. But it needs to be told in a sequence of how things happen that people can understand. Cover all the important parts. If there is damage done, if the reason that the road floods is because there's a drain that's stopped up, cover that. Make sure everything that's important as a part of the story is a part that you tell in the story. Because the viewer should be able to hear and to know and to understand exactly what took place. They hear that there was a flood. They know there was a flood because we don't have good drainage or because a lot of water comes to this area. And they understand that it has an effect on people and on the circumstances. So that's the story. They need to hear, to know, and understand. So your responsibility as the storyteller, and we've talked about that being what we all are, is we tell the story. We get the shots that tell the story because no one wants to just hear someone read to them. We get these statements that add to the story. If you've interviewed someone about the flood, and my first thing would be like, gee, I wonder who this affected. So maybe a student walking up and say, hey, what happened when this flood took place? What did it do for you? Well, I had to walk a block away to get across the street, or I couldn't park in front of the building, or it made me late to class. Those things are important parts of the story. Background information, maybe talking to some people around the building. Has this happened before? Has this happened from the beginning? Why do you think this happens? What's been done about it? And the most important thing and our responsibility is tell the truth. Whatever you say needs to be factual, needs to be well thought out, and you need to make sure that you're telling the truth about what's going on. The three phases of production: pre-production, production, and post-production. In pre-production, what is the story? What will it take to tell it? What obstacles will there be? Who will tell the story? Now, and I'm still going to use the example of the flood. So obviously the story is that when we get a lot of rain, or even a little bit of rain sometimes, the road in front of the communication building floods to the point that people can't park there. And that it might limit people being able to come to class and maneuver around campus. What will it take to tell the story? It will take some interviews from people affected. It will take a lot of video of the water and what takes place. It might take some information from people in maintenance or people that are involved in the work around the campus that help about drainage and things that take place to get the water out. What obstacles will there be? You might be shooting in the rain, might be one of them. It may be hard to get everybody together. And then one of the obstacles that might come about, depending upon some types of stories, people may not want to talk about it. You may be going to ask a question that they don't want to give that answer. They don't want to be the person that says, hey, somebody screwed up and this shouldn't have been done this way. So that's an obstacle that you're going to have to work around. Who will tell the story? Are you going to voice over with a lot of video? Are you going to have someone that's your face for the story that you get the initial? If I'm going to branch off a little bit, if you're talking about a team's run for the state championship in football, then their high school football coach might be the guy. You might start with an awful lot of stuff and enhance it with voiceover, maybe a couple of little clips from other people, but he's going to be basically the person that's overall responsible for getting that story out. Production. We're going to shoot the main event. We're going to pick a spot. Our spot's going to be one that gives us good background things. I don't want to talk about this flood unless that big flood of water is behind my shot. If I'm going to interview someone, I would really like to interview them standing where that shot is over their shoulder, that flood is over their shoulder. I want to give perspective so that if a car drives through there, boy, I sure want that, to see how high the water is up on the car. I want something to show me how high the water is up on the curb, how high the water goes across the road. Those type of things are important. Who supports the interview? The other people that are there. Someone that runs across the street, or someone that comes up and has to jump puddles or go around things. Those are things that people that support. Are all the aspects of the story covered? Who? Now, if I'm having someone as my face, I want to tell who they are. And when you're telling who they are, basically, it's not just, this is Bill Smith and he saw the flood. Why is Bill Smith the guy to talk to? This is Bill Smith. He is over maintenance in regards to the drainage around campus or something like that. What? We're talking about a flood. When? Timestamp it. Give it the, this happened last night. This happened today. This is what's causing students to be late to class right now. Where is it? Give the location. How did it happen? If it's because a drain is plugged up, or maybe just the fact that so much water comes, it doesn't drain good. But those are the things that we need to tell. Post-production, we take the unedited video and it becomes a story. We decide how we're going to start it with our interviews, with whatever shots we have, and we put those in place in sequence to tell the story. Our graphics are then added to identify and enhance, tell who's involved, where we're at, and then the last most important thing is that video is exported for use. At the end of this video, when I'm done, let me click off of this. Okay, right there. I have some really cool video I shot of the flood, and I'm going to drop this in right at the end. And so I want you to see, as you look through it, it's not going to take you long to look through it. I actually have one where I put a bunch of joke stuff in, and I didn't do voiceover. I just did it for my own entertainment. But take a look at it and see how it could be used and how a story could be developed from it. That's what we're look is for this particular couple of this day, and then be ready on Wednesday as we start some camera stuff. Other than that, I will see you all then.